Okay, breaking news for everybody. Since we've recorded the show, there have been 2 more coaches added to the list of coaches on the carousel. Matt Luke fired from Ole Miss. Chris Peterson just stepping down late Monday afternoon from Washington. Creates some interesting opportunities. His 2 Power 5 jobs are now in the open. Ole Miss being the SEC, Washington being the Pac-12. We'll discuss that next week in week 2 of our continuing coverage of the College Coaching Carousel. Try saying that 5 times fast. But in the meantime, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Enter the carousel. This is the time of renewal.
Nix takes the knee. This one's over. This one's over. Let the celebration begin. You're fired.
You're listening to The Review on the OSG Podcasting Network.
That's right, everybody. You are listening to The Review. It's the online sports guys talking college football, wrapping up the week that was in the world of CFB as the regular season comes to a close.
Almost. We have Army-Navy next week.
Almost. We have Army-Navy next week.
Attaboy, Luther.
And we have conference championship games next week. But more importantly, it's the kickoff to the college football postseason, or as what we call it around here, welcome to Carousel.
Identify. Rise.
Now is the time for renewal.
Now is the time for renewal, and a time where college football's either part ways with or add new coaches. And we've got a pretty long list already, and we're not even a day into this. Barry Odom gone at Missouri. Bob Davie left New Mexico. I agree. He agreed, I think, a little over a week ago that this week would be his last game. Tony Sanchez gone at UNLV. The most recent acts falling in Tampa, where Charlie Strong is no longer the head coach at South Florida. And supposedly it's just a matter of when Colorado State asks Mike Bobo to step aside. Mix for some interesting names, some interesting programs, and I would be derelict in my duty if I did not mention that there's already rumors in the sports Twitter sphere, if I said that right.
Yeah,
that Clay Helton will be gone if he's not already gone at USC. Guys, any surprises here? Or are these some things that you expected to happen?
Wilkie hit it.
Well, I think the Barry Odom thing was kind of a surprise to me. Seeing him get let go by Missouri. He's a guy he played at Missouri, bleeds black and gold. You can say this was supposed to be the breakthrough year. And when you have an NCAA ruling go against you and the appeal, when you have a transfer quarterback, graduate transfer quarterback come in, and Kelly Bryant, and he has injury issues. And then Larry Roundtree can't do it all with everybody coming after him. And there were injury issues also on a defense that was supposed to be really stout this year. And, Barry Odom can't control that. I think if there was any pushback as far as, or any favorability of Barry Odom being dismissed, probably hiring Derek Dooley as offensive coordinator and your play caller probably wasn't the wisest move, since I don't think Derek Dooley had ever been a play caller before. And exactly. So that might be one thing you can point to. But Jim Sturk, the athletic director at Missouri, feels that this program should be among the best in the SEC. He feels that if they got the right coach in, they can be. And Barry Odom, to him, wasn't that right coach. And so after 4 years, he's moving on. And I imagine Odom will probably find a defensive coordinator position somewhere pretty fast.
Somebody needs to tell Stark that he's about 10 years behind the University of Georgia and at least a half dozen years behind Florida at this point. But what do I know?
Yeah, really. I mean, honestly, the Odom one so far has been the one that has surprised me, considering what he had to go through, what he's had to work with, and how he's tried to, bring Missouri into the middle of the pack consistently in the Southeastern Conference. I want to know, is there a plan? What is the plan? Who's a part of the plan? Did Stirk have somebody in mind?
I think he does.
Dooley? Was it Dooley, you think?
No, I think it's Josh Heupel, because remember, he was offensive coordinator at Missouri with Barry Odom before he came to UCF. And we know the success he's having at UCF. And it wouldn't shock me because he is affordable. And if Missouri is going to pay for a coach, and I have a feeling that's what Stirk wants to do. He wants to bring somebody in and pay him. Heupel is probably the guy he has in mind. Whether he can pry him away at Heupel makes $2.3 million. His buyout is 10. Can he get not only with the buyout of Barry Odom, can they go ahead and pry Josh Heupel away from Orlando? That's the one I would see as far as the guy he's targeting right now. Luke Fickell is also, and Brian Harsin is also two guys that are high on Mizzou's list. But I think it's Heupel that they want.
But if you're Brian Harsin, would you leave Boise and what you've been able to create there to be drawn into the Southeastern Conference? And does Stirk really want to fork out $10 million to bring Heupel from UCF to Missouri, where maybe he'll claim another national championship of some kind, the national championship of Arklatex or something? I don't know. But I mean, for me, this is going to be an interesting situation in trying to figure out who's going to be next at Missouri, because they're really going to have to win. And I mean this for both Stirk and whoever this coach is. They're really going to have to win the press conference.
Couple other jobs that we didn't mention that are already out there, and that includes Florida State. Because I know John wanted to talk about that.
And I'm hearing James
Odell.
Franklin.
No.
He's expressed some interest in that, believe it or not.
No. 1,000 times no.
And then there's the
as an alum, who do you want?
Odell. I've wanted Odell before they hired the quitter, and I still want Odell now, although I'm fairly certain that the result that happened this weekend against the University of South Georgia Gainesville campus is going to influence the influencers. Oh, he couldn't win the big game, so Odell's only a 6-6 coach. I wanted Odell to have it the last time through. And with this go around, because honestly, I will continue to make this point. You will have lost, regardless of who you bring in. You will have lost an entire decade of competitiveness in the Atlantic Coast Conference. That takes some serious doing if you're a university in the ACC. Florida State happens to be that university. Here's what I would do. Give Odell Haggins a 5-year, $15 million contract. Make it all guaranteed as an attaboy for serving the university as well as he has. Make him the coaching development toward whatever you want, to try to purge everything that has happened the last handful of years with the quitter and with Willie Taggart, to purge it all. Have Odell Haggins be your caretaker to build toward bringing in someone in a couple of years' time. If that name comes through, then you bring him in. Odell keeps his contract. All the money's guaranteed.
Time out.
You're using your first time out of the show.
We have breaking news.
Okay.
Would that be Steve Adazio?
That indeed would be Steve Adazio out at Boston College.
I've got it confirmed from BC.
Okay,
so confirmation from BC.
All right, Wilkie. So you were wondering about the Adazio in Boston College, and now you have your answer.
What do they do?
I saw it pop up, and I emailed a couple of sources and from Boston College, and one answered immediately to the affirmative.
Where do they go from here? That's a program with a pretty good, rich history that's really kind of been mediocre at best over the last few years under Adazio. Do they have a future? Or are they looking for somebody that's going to be an up-and-comer?
Well, it takes a certain coach to be able to be successful at BC. And, I think a lot of Steve Adazio's issues was the new athletic director at Boston College. And I don't think the two saw eye to eye. But BC, I can see them going toward a line coach in the NFL because I think, that's where BC kind of values things. But it has to have some kind of ties to the Northeast, but can penetrate into the South because you have to do that in the ACC if they're going to be successful. So I honestly don't know who they'll be looking at name-wise, but those, just off the top of my head, those are a couple of scenarios I can see they're going with. Looking for a good line coach in the NFL that has some head coaching chops to him.
Interesting move there. We've talked about some of the other programs. Anybody else that we think might or might not be going away? I mean, there's always the Clay Helton USC thing, which we talked about. Here are a couple of guys who I think might end up being in play or jobs that may be in question due to the way that they finished the season. And I can kind of tackle these in order, with the first being Coach Kaki in Michigan. Coach Kaki, of course, being Jim Harbaugh. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, just go back and take a look at the Ohio State-Michigan game from this past weekend and see how much Ohio State is better on both sides of the ball and deeper, bigger, faster, stronger, and deeper.
Well, he's even asked about that too.
Yeah, he wasn't exactly thrilled to hear the question. Is Michigan going to be satisfied being that 9-3, 8-4 program that takes a backseat to Ohio State in the Big Ten every year?
Well, I think they're way too invested in Jim Harbaugh to make the move now. They'll next year will be the year where he has to break the streak. But no, they're not going to make a move on Jim Harbaugh. I mean, there's way too much invested in him right now, and they're going to give him another year.
Okay, well, I'll bring up another big program then, and that's Texas, a team that just absolutely fell flat on their faces the last few weeks of the season. Does Tom Herman got something to be worried about?
I would say yes, but next year, not this year.
And it depends on what recruiting class he's got coming in.
Yeah.
I mean, there was so much hype about them being a potential top 10 and possibly even a pick six or a college football playoff team, and they were nowhere near that this season.
Nope.
They finished 7-5. Yeah, they finished with a big win over Texas Tech, but a 7-5 season for a team that a lot of the alleged experts had in their top 10 is not exactly going to cut it very long in Austin, Texas.
Unacceptable.
Well, they had offensive line issues all year, and that was expected. You thought after a while it would get better, but it never did. And then the injuries really crept up on the defensive end, and they were just some skill position players that just weren't performing. So, I agree with John. It's going to be a year before Tom Herman needs to get nervous.
And then there's Will Muschamp at South Carolina, another team who showed some flashes, but Coach Boom had a few injury issues to deal with, and he was playing with his third-string quarterback. I really thought that they were going to end up being better than they were, just for the simple fact they didn't look that badly in beating Georgia mid-season, but then the bottom completely fell out.
Yeah, I think that one really, for me, comes down to injuries and having to start Helinski at quarterback sooner than I think he was ready. And just you're in the buzzsaw of the SEC East at the same time. And so I think that there's probably going to be some discussions in the off season. I don't think that the leash for Will Muschamp Wilkie come 2020 is going to be a very long one, though.
No, you're right. And once they get their 7th loss next year, if that should happen, then I think that's when the move will be made. I think there's some fatigue there. Again, it depends on what kind of recruiting class he's got in and whether they perform next year. But South Carolina really puzzled me too. And they just, after that Georgia game, they just did not look interested anymore.
Yeah, you could, excuse me, you could definitely say that. Outside of that, really, there were just some coordinators that changed, that lost their jobs. Several teams parted ways with offensive coordinators. And did we talk about Greg Schiano to Rutgers? Now a done deal.
Okay. Have fun with that one.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't the Big East, Greg Schiano. You're not playing Boston College. You're not playing Syracuse. You're not playing UConn. You got Ohio State. You got Michigan. You got Penn State, all in your division. So good luck with that one.
Good luck, Cowboy.
Yeah, he's getting $32 million over 8 years. He wants an indoor facility. He wants his assistants to be paid competitively toward the big, like other Big Ten assistants are. I guess they've countered with all those to keep Greg Schiano happy. But 6-6 and 7-5 for Rutgers is about as good as it's going to get.
That would be my mental
in Piscataway. If you walk 10 feet outside of the campus of Rutgers, I don't think anybody cares.
Nope.
You're talking about a team that's easily one of the 5 worst programs in college football in the 2019 season, going 2-10 and really not being competitive in almost any of their games.
And that was a not very good 2-10. I mean, that takes some special doing in a big conference.
They finished number 5 in our bottom of the barrel rankings. And for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, check out theonlinesportsguys.com, our weekly college football season column, The Dirty Dozen, and Bottom of the Barrel, where we talk about the 12 best and 5 worst teams in college football. No, Rutgers wasn't the worst team in college football, but they were not far from it.
Damn close.
And of course, all sorts of traffic going on Twitter right now about the Arkansas head coaching search. Lane Kiffin's name is all over the place on that one. People are saying that he's going to be the next head coach of Arkansas. And, now that Charlie Strong's available, there seems to be some traffic about bringing Charlie Strong, a Batesville, Arkansas native. But I don't see Arkansas making that move at all.
Lane Kiffin twice now.
What's that?
Charlie's been fired twice now. He's working his way down the ladder.
Yeah, I guess FCS is next for Charlie Strong.
He lost. He basically got run out of Texas. Not that they didn't like him personally, but he just wasn't a very good coach there. He goes to South Florida, had some moderate success early on, and then the bottom fell out there too.
Right, but he had great success at Louisville.
Yeah, he did.
And if Arkansas would listen to a very famous alum there, Barry Switzer, he believes Mike Leach should be the head coach at his alma mater.
That would be kind of funny.
Oh, my.
Yes, it would. Funny. But how long would the novelty go away?
That tiger at LSU that's a live, real tiger sitting in there in some metal structure, which clearly he could rip his way out of if he wanted to, even half wanted to. That's an awesome one.
I give it a year.
Yeah, I would. I can't imagine Leach going to Fayetteville and not looking at them and the people there and just like, what did I just do?
Oh, my God. Oh, the culture train wreck would be amazing television. I don't know if it would be amazing wins and losses, though.
Bring back Bobby Petrino.
No. Oh, no. Oh, no.
They'll bring back Houston Nutt before they do that.
Yes.
Houston Nutt, who's already openly lobbied for said job.
Oh, yeah. Because he's ready for it.
Well, he does have 3 SEC West division championships under his belt. That's pretty good.
Yeah, there was a little bit of an issue though when he parted ways with the Arkansas faithful, and I'm not sure that that's something that could be a fence that could be really easily mended, or could it?
No.
Well, Mac Brown came back to North Carolina.
He did.
Yeah, Mac didn't have quite the same issues that the Right Reverend did when he left Fayetteville. That would be interesting, to say the least.
That's a word to use. Yeah, that's a word.
What do you see we wrap things up here on the first block of the show, guys?
Do your tease.
Yes. When we come back in the second half, we will talk about big games, rivalry games, all the college football playoff action, that and more when we come back for the second block of the review here on the OSG Sports Podcasting Network.
The online sports guys would love to hear from you. Go to our Twitter page at OSG Sports for a comment, rant, or just whatever's on your mind about college football.
Soccer Down Here is sponsored by Apolinski & Associates, LLC, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience. Call Steve Apolinski at 518-350-4231 or email him at steve@aa-legal.com if you need help with a wrongful death or serious injury matter. Steve Apolinski is rated one of the top 100 trial attorneys in Georgia, recognized as Legal Elite by Georgia Trend magazine for being one of the most effective lawyers in Georgia.
If you want to scale a mountain, buy boots. If you want to turn your crush into something more, say hi. At Country Financial, we know protecting the things you love and preparing for tomorrow start with simple steps. So we help you take small steps today with insurance and financial services that can have a big impact on your family's future.
For all your home, auto, and life insurance needs, call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871.
Jones to throw. Floats it to the sideline. And it's intercepted on the play. Down the sideline, Tigers. Smoke Monday. He's going to score. Touchdown, Auburn.
Thanks for sticking around, folks. You are listening to the second half of the review. It's the online sports guys, the OSG, talking college football here on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Spreaker.com, all your favorite podcasting networks, including Google Play and the iTunes Store. And most importantly, if you're listening to the podcast, hopefully you found us on our phone app.
Attaboy.
Look at OSG Sports for all those things and more. News, sports, entertainment, all kinds of fun. Get the app now because it's free, folks. It doesn't cost you a penny.
Nothing.
With all that being said, let's talk about the college football games from this past weekend, and probably one of the crazier, wackier, more fun games that I've seen in a long time. The Iron Bowl.
They throw it. It is incomplete. No, it's intercepted. Intercepted down the sideline, Tigers. Jacoby McClain. He may go the distance. One man to beat. They're not going to get him. He's to the 20, 15, 10, 5. Touchdown, Auburn!
John, there.
Yeah.
Was it as nutty in person as it was on television?
Yeah, it was. Full disclosure, I started giggling in the second quarter. And Jarrett Smith from over at Soccer Down Here, and you can download that app as well. It's free. It's you. He said basically we were trying to figure out what the next step above stupid was, and he said plaid. The game hit plaid second quarter and was on paint thinner for the final three quarters. So yeah, it was absolutely that crazy, and I just started giggling uncontrollably. The only thing that kept me from being in a corner was that I was sitting in a seat and it didn't have a corner. So you just start giggling. And Phil, as I was talking to you, Wilkie, I use this analogy. It's like, when you're trying to be fancy and you've got the deck of cards in your hand between your four fingers and your thumb, and you're trying to be all fancy and shift it from one hand to the other, and then you press too hard and the cards just go out of your hand all over the place. That's what the game was.
Well, what was the mood in the stadium right before halftime when Auburn got that 1 second added to the clock and got that kickoff? I mean,
the free field goal that they shouldn't have gotten.
Yeah.
Well, I think more folks were focused on the head coach for the opposition and the Class A nutty of biblical proportions that he threw as he was walking off the field, because a lot of folks were trying to figure out if he did in fact say Gianluca Pagliuca, to the officials as the ball got snapped. But
in that particular instance, so he was right.
So I mean, for me, and looking at it, you don't hear whistles, and for me, that was the larger question in all of it. Hey, if that's what they called, that's what they called, whatever. And if it was right, it was right. It was wrong, it was wrong. I never heard audio associated with the call to stop the play.
Here's the thing. According to the rule book, it takes 3 seconds to snap the ball and kick it for a field goal.
Right.
Yeah,
and
so you
3
wind
seconds left in the clock, so theoretically that couldn't actually happen.
Well, remember the rule in the NBA, the Trent Tucker rule, where the catch and release from 1/10 of a second, Tucker hits the 3. You might have something like this added in college football now to make sure that something like this does or does not happen in the future.
The rule already exists.
No, but I mean, adjusting the clock is what I'm talking about. Adjusting the clock to add to make sure that, if there's a second and you've got something going on, that you add time or something like that. You might have a Trent Tucker rule associated with college football now.
And what was the level of noise when Bolivis's field goal hit the upright? We heard the loud bang.
I know with the tube getting hit flush. You hear that big bass. Actually, initially, it was silence because of the shock of Bolivis hitting the upright. Everybody was like, "What?" And then seriously, if you watch the game on whichever network you want to rewatch it, or maybe if someone has sent it to YouTube and used fair use to put the whole game back up there, you hear the ball hit the upright flush. Then there's silence from the crowd for like a beat or two, and then all hell breaks loose. So it was an interesting social experiment for me to see this entire dynamic happen. So yeah, and then for Nick Saban to be beaten by a play drawn up by a high school coach at heart, where you line up your punter wide and freak everybody out, and you have 12 men on the field. It was a day of indiscipline for Alabama, actually, when you had one of your offensive linemen get called for a false start 3 separate times, illegal substitution at least twice. And so for me, there were other issues at play than just being beaten by a play at the back of the playbook.
And nothing could top the end of the game when the fans started storming the field and drunken Auburn housewives were getting lost in the bushes.
Yeah.
Hopefully at some point in time, somebody went back looking for them and fished them out.
Yeah. And I saw more gouges from the hedges, or from the hedge, taken in hand as folks were walking toward Toomer's Corner. You had folks with hedge in one hand and toilet paper in the other as they were heading to the hedges after it was one of the craziest games I've ever seen, either as a civilian or as a member of the media.
And what that game did, it knocked Alabama pretty much out of the college football playoff conversation. Auburn not already in it.
Unless you're Gary Danielson and you sit there and you make your case, Wilkie, for a 2-loss Alabama to be a part of the process.
Well, my question to you, John, is when you heard that clank and there was that moment of silence, did you kind of hear Twittered Anthony on the other side of the stadium going, crap?
It might have been different. It might have been a different word. But I will say this. Full disclosure. 3-point game, late in the fourth quarter. I honestly was thinking it was going to come down to a kicker. And what we've seen from Adam Griffith and Cade Foster in the past, and now you add Bolivis to that mix, as someone who knows wide left and wide right by heart, I heard a statistic that no school has missed more kicks in the last decade than the University of Alabama. There's your irony right there.
Stat of the day.
Stat of the day. Boom, boom, stat of the day. Okay, there's your stat of the day. But yeah, absolutely crazy. And I probably did hear a colorful metaphor from Twittered Anthony on the other side of the field.
Now, a game that did have a huge impact on the college football playoff, only in the fact that it cemented them as probably the most dangerous and best team in college football, and that's Ohio State just absolutely throttling Michigan.
Heard of them.
And that offense is an NFL offense.
Yeah.
I mean, and that defense isn't too far behind. I mean, Ohio State was impressive yesterday, and when you look at their schedule, I mean, they're pounding people offensively, and the defense has come around. I mean, it's much better now that they got everybody there. But J.K. Dobbins was a man among boys. Justin Fields comes back from we thought it was a season-ending knee injury, and just throws lasers. Ohio State and LSU, I mean,
he threw frickin' lasers.
Ohio State, LSU, they are clearly the two best teams in college football this year. And with Clemson probably not too far behind. But what they have, to me, they're the best teams playing on the field right now, those two. And that would be a great championship game.
Speaking of LSU, they matched up with Texas A&M in Death Valley, and that game was over pretty much within the first 5 to 10 minutes. As the Bengals jumped up at 21-0 lead and never looked back.
No, that game was over when Joe Burrow turned his back and showed the Cajun spelling of his last name. When that happened,
that was over.
It was over.
Done. Over. Done.
Absolute chaos. Dogs and cats living together. Alligators.
Mass hysteria. Yeah, mass hysteria.
Alligators friends with people now.
Yeah, that game was over. The size
of the luggage
pop,
out of them.
No. The size of the cheap pop that Burrow got it reminded me of, and here's your antiquated hockey reference of the day, when the Boston Bruins retired Phil Esposito's number and put it in the rafters at number 7. That. Ray Bork was wearing number 7 up until that day. And then Bork, as a part of the presentation, takes his sweater off and is wearing 77 and a new sweater underneath.
And the Boston people went nuts.
Oh, absolutely ape. Ray Bork is crying, and I mean, it was emotional all over the place. That's the kind of pop that reminded me of when he came out there in that jersey. But yeah. And
that's
so,
a good one.
But I mean, and think about it. Now the university is probably going to market, or I hope that Joe Burrow does, market the EAUX spellings somehow. Yes. And I hope that both the university and Joe Burrow make an absolute killing.
And basically, in that game yesterday in Death Valley, he secured his Heisman Trophy. I mean, no interceptions, 3 touchdowns, over 350 yards passing. He's going to be the runaway winner of the Heisman Trophy, and deservedly so. I mean, what he's done with that offense at LSU, I mean, LSU and Ohio State right now, to me, are the 1-2 teams in college football. Clemson's just not too far behind. And big reason why LSU is there is because of Joe Burrow.
Speaking of Clemson, your third team probably for the college football playoff, barring something.
Dabo Sweeney, be quiet. Take off the tinfoil hat. Take it off. Take the tinfoil hat off, sir.
It's just getting old. Yeah, this whole Clemson against the world is getting old.
Stop it.
Yeah, there might be people disrespecting the ACC, but absolutely nobody is disrespecting Clemson, who is a damn good football team.
Yes.
And easily won their games in a very non-competitive conference. They have to beat Virginia this week in the conference championship. Virginia is a team that has struggled, even though they are 9-3. They haven't exactly been the most dominant 9-3 team you'll ever see. It should be a fairly easy win for Clemson. Win and you're in, no questions asked. There's absolutely no argument, no debate. Nobody's going to leave Clemson out. There's no reason to.
None.
Stop. No, but I will say this, that and Barry Trammell brought this up in the trophy game show.
Excellent plug, sir.
The committee this year loves dominance, and Clemson has dominated throughout the year. Everybody, they can't help the fact that except North Carolina on the road. However, they'll dominate. To me, they'll dominate Virginia. I mean, this is the matchup where they'll dominate. So they're in. Yeah. So calm down, Dabo Swinney. You're going to get in. You're going to get in at 13-0, and you'll probably be the 3 seed, and you'll have to play more like the LSU, and because they're going to win the SEC championship game, and it's probably going to be a walk for them too. And Ohio State probably have a walk in the Big Ten title game against Wisconsin.
Oh wow.
Ohio State beating Wisconsin. I think it was 38-7 earlier in season.
And I think this Ohio State team is better than that Ohio State team, about a month ago. So there's your top 3 teams right there. The 4th team, that's where it gets a little crazy because that Utah? Big 12 championship game. See, I like Utah. I watched that game against Colorado. But again, they have to be dominant in the title game because this committee likes dominance. And the Baylor-Oklahoma game has that feel of a play-in game, doesn't it?
Oh, potentially. I would not rule out the Georgia Bulldogs, however, at number 4, currently in our poll, most every poll.
But if you get whacked by LSU, that blows you out.
Yeah. Georgia's in a must-win game, period.
And you're not going to have Lawrence Cager. And for the first half, you're not going to have George Pickens.
They didn't have him for the first half against
that was Georgia Tech.
That was Georgia Tech. He didn't even. I don't think he played much in the game before either.
You've got offensive line issues against the LSU team that's got a dynamite pass rush.
Well,
and they showed that against Texas A&M. That's why I like LSU in a walk in this one, because too many weapons are gone in the offensive end for Georgia, and there's that the offensive line issues, and LSU is just the it team right now, and they've got everything going for them.
Oh, I think if Georgia can slow them down with the defense that has been absolutely suffocating this season, they at least have a puncher's chance.
They have to win it to get in. They have to beat LSU. And I just don't see it happening. Utah has to dominate in the Pac-12 title game for them to even think about getting number 4. I just think it's Oklahoma, and it's going to be Oklahoma and Baylor is basically a play-in game. And I think Oklahoma's kind of got the scales tipped toward their favor in that game. That I think there's your 4 right there.
I mean, Baylor's got something to play for too after getting out to a big lead versus Oklahoma just a couple of weeks ago at Baylor in Waco, and then just basically, I don't know,
second half adjustments.
Yeah, Oklahoma made some adjustments, did some things differently, came back, just absolutely stormed back, winning the game. Baylor's probably going to be out to try to save some face, to try to get some revenge. Whether they're physically capable of doing that's a different issue, but this isn't a dominant Oklahoma team by any stretch of the imagination. They really struggled down the stretch.
Yeah, but they righted a lot of wrongs against Oklahoma State Saturday night. First of all, they're a 70% run team now, and they've got the horses to do that. And that's kind of where Baylor's kind of weak in their defensive is stopping the run. Ever since that game, Oklahoma has really committed more to the run, and it's helped them out in that regard. So that way they can control clock and control the field. And I thought OU's defense looked the best they've looked all year against OSU. They got a really good pad rush. I know Spencer Sanders wasn't there, but there were still some good part. I mean, there were still some really good weapons there. Chuba Hubbard was pretty much bottlenecked the whole game, and he should have had some running lanes to run in, and he didn't. And I think that's the best Oklahoma's defense has looked all year. Can that carry over into Arlington on Saturday against the Bears? We'll see. But I just think that, to me, the scales are more tipped toward Oklahoma. They showed me a lot of things against OSU as to why they could possibly be that 4th team in the playoff.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. We'll go round table here as we kind of get to the second half of the second block here on the review. Conference championship picks and who goes to the playoff.
All right. Well, I mean, I'm going to be chalk. It's going to be Ohio State. It's going to be LSU. It's going to be Clemson. And I'll go Utah as my 4. How about that? Wilkie, what about you?
All right. LSU will win the SEC championship.
Yep.
Clemson will win the ACC.
Yep.
Ohio State will win the Big Ten.
Yep.
Those are top three, and I'm going to go with Oklahoma as my fourth team in because they should win the Big 12 against Baylor. Baylor is going to be sky high for the game, wanting revenge, but Oklahoma, again, showed me something against Oklahoma State. And so I think it's those four that are going to get in to the playoff.
And for me, Ohio State easily takes care of Wisconsin. I think LSU beats Georgia, but I think it's going to be a game that's a lot closer than most people think it's going to be. We're talking about less than a touchdown between the two. I think Clemson wins in a run away from Virginia. And for my fourth, I like Utah, much like John does. I think Utah beats Oregon in the Pac-12 championship game. I think they beat them by at least 10 to 15 points. And I think that's going to be enough to get them in because I think Oklahoma is going to struggle to beat Baylor. They may end up beating them, but I think you're talking about another very, very close game. And at the end of the day, I think that's going to end up being held against the Sooners at the end of the season. Would I like to see the chaos theory jump into this? Absolutely.
Yes.
I would love to see.
Yes.
Nothing would make me happier than to see Wisconsin, Georgia, Virginia, although that'll never happen. Any one of those three winning their game throws everything else into chaos. I don't think it's happening, but wouldn't it be fun if it did?
Yeah, I'll tell you the best matchups in championship game weekend are Oregon and Utah in the Pac-12, Cincinnati and Memphis in the American. That's the rematch. I mean, and it's in Memphis again. So, of course, Memphis won on Saturday over Cincinnati for the right to host and to play in the title game. The other one, I'm looking at UAB FAU. I think that's going to be a fun game to watch as well. Great storylines in that one. And then Louisiana and Appalachian State kind of intrigued me as well. Although that game's in Boone, I think this is a good, job interview. I can't think of the best analogy for Billy Napier here because
showcase.
Job showcase, yeah, because what he's done at Louisiana is great. I mean, he's got him in a position to play for a Sun Belt championship. And if I'm Arkansas, and I've lobbied for him to be the next Arkansas coach, if I'm Missouri, I mean, 2 SEC programs with openings, I would look long and hard at Billy Napier. Because this
Even with what he tried to do with his players and forcing them to donate to the athletic fund?
Makes no difference to me. I think this kid, I think he's one of the up-and-comer stars in college football. He comes from a great background. We all know where he was. He should be Arizona State's head coach if they were going to go the conventional route. And he would have been successful there at Tempe. But I think this is a chance for Billy Napier to show what he's done at Louisiana. And I know of 2 SEC programs that have openings, and I would look long and hard at Billy Napier as one of the possibilities for those positions.
Another team that you mentioned there, Florida Atlantic, is everybody's pal.
No.
You don't think he's going to make it onto the carousel? Not because he got fired.
I think you will. I think that, but I don't want him in Florida State because I've heard that he's allegedly been vetted or shown interest in Tallahassee. I don't want him anywhere within Tallahassee unless he's in the visitors' locker room.
Anything else on you guys' mind this week that you want to talk about before we wrap up?
Nope,
North Central of Illinois knocking off Mount Union, brother.
Woo! Oh, and big shout out to my Georgia Southern Eagles for their rivalry week win over the Georgia State Panthers. Convincingly, too, I might add. That is correct. Okay, well, that all being said, I guess we'll wrap things up here, guys.
That's your promo.
Make sure you keep tuned in this week, guys. I think, Wilkie, are we going to have You and Twitter Anthony going to have a little show this week, kind of previewing the week ahead?
If he's available, sure.
If he's recovered.
That too.
That's great.
Well, if they do, make sure you tune into that. You'll be able to find it. You'll get, if you've got the OSG Sports app, you'll get a notification as soon as that show drops. And at the very least, we'll be back again next weekend with another episode of The Review. We are the Online Sports Guys. This is The Review, and you are listening to us on the OSG Sports Podcasting Network.
Enjoy all of our shows from the OSG Sports Podcasting Network. The OSG Sports app is up and running. Download it today.